Hello, everyone. My name is David Reed. Welcome to Dial the Gate, episode 112. This episode is featuring a friend of mine, Martin McClean, who is responsible for a number of the props behind me, particularly the two lighted ones right now. We're going to have a up close and personal look at those, plus a few other pieces in the collection and some outside of the Stargate world as well. Just a moment here to wrap up the show for this season. Before we get started, if you like Stargate and want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click that like button, which makes a huge difference with YouTube's algorithm and will help the show continue to grow its audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the Dial the Gate channel. And we bring you this show every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. And if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as cups and other accessories in a variety of sizes and colors at dialthegate.com. From the merchandise tab, you can click on a specific design to see what the items are that are being offered. Checkout is fast and easy. You can use a credit card or PayPal. Just visit dialthegate.com or scroll straight to the dialthegate.com/merch page. And thanks so much for your support. Let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Martin McClean and talk shop. Mr. Martin McClean, prop maker, welcome to
Thank you, David.
my sets. And your pieces are missing behind me right now. That's because they're actually in front of me. But thank you. I wanted to thank you so much for helping to contribute to the set of season 2, and I really appreciate you being on.
Oh, look, thanks for the opportunity. I was delighted to do so, and there'll be more coming your way as soon as I finish them.
Well, I can't wait, and I can't wait to show them off to fans. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is not your day job, right? This is something that you do as a hobby. Am I correct about that?
That's correct, yeah. During
What
the
do
day,
you do, if you don't mind? Yeah.
Oh, I work in the software industry.
Okay.
I'm up in Seattle, work for one of the large software companies up here.
Okay.
And I work in basically user experience design in different software products and different devices. So that's sort of my day job. And sort of the out of hours job is essentially making props from TV, movies, etc. Sort of designing and building those props. So that's what I like to do as a bit of a hobby.
I am not surprised that you are involved in something considering a user experience, considering the fact that, whoa, maybe I should close the boxes before showing them off. At least one. So not only are the toys cool, but I very much got the impression, this is the crate that the Naquadah, the smaller Naquadah reactor comes in, that I clearly get the impression that you are a big fan of the unboxing process of the user experience, like what Apple basically started, like we were talking about earlier.
Yep. It's essentially a process that we call owning the last mile,
okay,
which is making sure that when that prop gets into your hands, that the experience is a good one. But the reality is it's just fun to do it as well. So I had a good time sort of making up the cases and all of the labels and everything else.
So I want to talk about one of the blueprints that you sent here, and I'm going to show it off on screen. This is the Atlantis base blueprint. Now, did you design this from the ground up?
Yes.
So
yes.
Tell me. I'm going to show it off to everybody. Tell me about this.
Well, it's essentially this sort of the props and the posters really started from a desire to try and find some merchandise for Stargate. I've been a fan of the show for years, and I was looking around for some great merchandise. There isn't very much out there, and so I decided to create my own. And what I did was I did a series of technical schematics posters and things like that, like the Atlantis one you can see there. And if people are interested in that, by the way, they can download that free.
Yes, I was about to ask. So
yeah.
that link is going to be, and all the links to what we're talking about. Martin sent me a huge deck of links that are going to be in the description below. So if you're watching this, you already have access to all that content and perhaps more. So this is so cool. I mean, it's hard to show on the screen here, but like it's all been thought out and thought through as if someone technical, namely you, of course, were approaching this and saying, okay, how can we take this to the next level?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and the wonderful thing about the Stargate fandom is that it's an incredible family of people that are super friendly. And so if you do make an error, as I did on the Northwest Pier, somebody will pick that up and
Really?
Yes.
In terms of like what's located there?
Yeah, there was a difference between, I think, the model that was used in the television series between season 2 and season 3.
There was.
And somebody picked that up and very kindly pointed that in my direction. So it's always awesome to get that kind of feedback, because A, it means people are engaged with it,
and
B,
they care.
They care enough to do it. And so I'm always delighted to get feedback and find out things that I can make it better. And I'm always happy to update that, which I did. So hopefully, hopefully now nobody's upset.
The one that's available online will have the corrective. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what, especially with Atlantis, which changed from Rainmaker's version to a couple of the other vendors' versions, and it was one of the complaints that Mark Savella, the digital effects guy with Stargate Productions, had an issue with, and particularly with Atlantis and the Puddle Jumper, even the Puddle Jumper's design changes, and that was not something that they were going to allow to happen with Destiny, period. Like, that was going to be, everyone who had a copy of Destiny had the exact same model of Destiny. So they definitely changed that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that makes the prop making so difficult, because there are no blueprints,
right?
Or at least there are no blueprints that I possess. And so you're doing everything from visual images and, various bits of research that you can find. And I'm always on the lookout for somebody who will go, I own some blueprints and would like to confidentially even share those with me. If you're out there, I'm always happy to do that. But otherwise, it's kind of a challenge, right? Because you want to make sure that you've got everything as accurate as you can. The advantage of it is, though, that when you do the props, you end up doing the props with more studio lighting in mind than the original raw prop might have looked.
You have to consider that it's been lit, professionally.
Yes, and I kind of like that in the end, because then when somebody sees it, or if I make it for somebody or donate it to someone, then they get it looking as how they remember it on the television show. So that sort of works out fairly well, and the process. And I found that was really significant when I did the Atlantis door control. I did this motion door control that did that. In fact, excuse me 1 second. I will grab it because it's behind me. So this door control here, so it sort of looks
like one of the ones that we sold at PropWorks. But that's fabricated?
Yeah, I designed and created this myself.
Wow.
Sort of indoor, sort of magnetic.
The faceplate and everything. Like that's pretty close to what it was.
It is, and the sort of the trying to make it look exactly how it was with respect, and obviously fit the electronics and what have you in there. So that's one of the great examples of where I think it worked out really positively to be basing it on something you've seen in the show. Although that prototype went through about, I don't know, a dozen different paint jobs.
Until you found the one you wanted?
Until I found the right one.
It takes a while to match. I mean, I was working with Remington Phillips over at SG1 Props when we were developing the Kino replica, and he had in that original case he was lucky enough to have access to the original mold for the interior spheres, and but just going through the paint process and getting it right, and then the sphere on the outside had to have the ones in the show had to be aged by millions of years, let's say, having been stored in that gumball machine that it was in forever. There's a whole process to it, and it's, you may look at it and go, oh, well, this is pretty awesome, not knowing that there are potentially hundreds and hundreds of hours put into bringing this thing to life. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The aging process is an extra layer on top. The paintwork takes the longest, I think, of anything to do, at least from my perspective, just because you want to make sure you get it as with as few imperfections as possible.
Are you talking about from a drawing perspective or from a selection perspective to get it right?
No, from a selection
Okay.
perspective, like the Puddle Jumper was the worst.
Oh
It
God.
was the giant sort of Puddle Jumper back there, but it was the worst because there is, I don't know, a bit like the DHD. There's at least a dozen different sort of stippled paint layers that go on top of each other that give it this sort of patina, this sort of look that is developed. And of course, none of that is documented anywhere that I have access to as a fan. So you end up having to do it yourself. It's rewarding when you finally get it, but it takes a while because again, you only have those photographs to use as reference, and they're lit from a studio perspective. So often they appear to be slightly different color than they actually were in the prop.
That's the thing. You can't guarantee that what you're seeing is exactly what it is that's going to come out in the end. I mean, the fact is, I mean, in a lot of cases they change from season to season, or when one of the props got replaced, then you got another look at another. It's just crazy. One of the things that I have been, and I have not shared this yet because it is a recent acquisition, just so you know, is a DHD glyph.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
I think it's Aries, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm going to put this up on the screen here so that the listeners can see it. But you assume that it has, like, the DHD would have a pretty simple paint job. But the amount, and I apologize, Martin can't see it as well as everyone else can, but the amount of paint that goes into just the detailing of it, that someone sat there and just took a number of different colors and a number of different passes over it to make this piece. And it's just so cool to be able to hold in your hand and say, okay, this is what it, but it doesn't look like this on screen. At least it doesn't to me. I get this thing and I'm like, this thing's practically a rainbow, I mean, it's like, this is it, but it's not what I thought it was because it's always lit.
Yeah.
So it's just craziness.
It's exactly the problem. Yeah.
So why props? How did you get into this? Is this something that you've been tinkering with since you were little? I mean, where are the roots for this for you? And then we're going to show some of these off.
Oh, okay. I used to be a maker when I was a kid. I used to make, like most kids would make, model airplanes, and but I was always drawn to science fiction. I always loved Star Trek. I always loved Star Wars, and of course I always loved Stargate. Stargate is my favorite, but I was always drawn towards the different pieces of equipment that they would use on television series like Star Trek phasers or tricorders and things of that nature.
Yeah, exactly.
And I used to build millions of these things out of cardboard when I was a kid and things like this. And so I sort of, as you sort of progress and you go on and do your professional career, that it sort of drifts away a little bit. And then when the pandemic hit, I think it was an opportunity to sort of think, well, I have extra time on my hands. What can I do? And I was a little frustrated that I couldn't find a lot of merchandise that MGM had licensed that I could purchase. So, and I still believe that there's a large addressable market for Amazon and others to do this. And so one of the things I thought, well, I could make my own and then I could share that with fans and that would give them something too. And at the same time, maybe it would inspire MGM to sort of say, well, we're going to license this to some, there's some amazing companies out there like Sideshow Collectibles and others that do incredible work. And maybe that, they might be inspired to sort of provide that for fans as well. And in the meantime, I can just do what I can and share that around.
The shortage of companies that can produce this content is non-existent. There are so many of them. The fact of the matter, Factory Entertainment, I don't know if you saw this, Factory Entertainment just put out a Borg Queen skull and spinal column from First Contact. And it's absolutely brilliant. It is absolutely amazing looking. And it's like, why can't we have pieces like this for Stargate? I get, and we have to remember that Star Trek is a behemoth compared to Stargate. But Stargate still has enough of that core audience that there's more than enough out there for in terms of fans who would be interested in having this,
I think so. I think it's and even in the show was running actively on television, I was always amazed that there was not more product in market for fans to enjoy. It always seemed like to me, if I put my corporate hat on for a second, I think it's like a missed revenue opportunity from that perspective as well to help provide that sort of material for fans to enjoy. So yeah, it seems really odd that they did that. But so that's where I always sort of became interested in the prop side of it. I didn't know how to make them when I started. So
you taught yourself.
Yes. I went and taught. I had built. My professional background is computer science and electronic engineering, and so I had built myself a 3D printer of reasonably ineffectual quality when they first came out, and I could see the potential in it to be able to sort of take ideas that you have and then bring them into reality. And so as that technology improved, I decided I need to learn CAD because I didn't really have a lot of CAD background. I have a lot of like Adobe Illustrator and design and stuff like that background, but I didn't have CAD background. So I went and taught myself CAD. So that took a while. Dredging up all the geometry ideas that you kind of hope that you can bury from school and never see again, but they're all back. So you end up having to go, oh, I remember that. So that the X, Y, what? Oh, not again. So we had to bring all that back out of storage. And then that was really great because once you learn that, you open up an entire world of design for yourself.
Correct.
You can basically make anything that you want. Within reason.
The 3D, and sometimes not even within reason. So the thing that has blown my mind, and you touched on it a little bit, is the 3D printer technology. I mean, that has just blown things wide open. I just got today. It's interesting that we're talking about props, and I know I'm talking a lot about the stuff that I own, but I mean, this is just because this is my perspective is coming from. Another company called Regal Robot. They have put out for several years now Star Wars Millennium Falcon asteroid field coffee table. Are you aware of this piece?
I've seen this piece.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Mine just showed up, sans the glass. The glass is being shipped separately. The detail of the Falcon is a 3D printed Falcon and hand painted. You cannot tell the difference under scrutiny from this and one of the ILM models. The detail is absolutely crazy. And when you've got professionals painting it or someone like you teaching yourself how to make this thing right, I mean, that's really exceptionally cool. So you're saying that the pandemic really helped you just kind of go full blown into this?
You're stuck really at home, working from home. You have extra time on your hands in the evenings and weekends, really, and try to stave off the boredom and the endless despair of the entire situation. You sort of look to find sort of a creative outlet, and I'm hoping that that it will, maybe other people will do the same, and because I realize this is a very difficult time for everybody as this sort of things go on and on. But that's what got me into it. I think it had sort of been sitting in the back of my mind for a long time, but I hadn't really got the tools to be able to create it, in my own house and in my own head. So that's where it came from. It's a lot of fun when you get it. The one thing that fans bring to producing prop memorabilia is a high degree of accuracy about what it has to look like, and I think that's the advantage that we bring sometimes.
Yeah, it's not a 9-to-5 thing. What they're working on is passion.
No, and then
working off of is passion.
Well, it's the North Pier again, right? I mean, if it's something wrong with the North Pier, you have to go back and fix it. So yeah, it makes it that way. And it's sort of, you get ideas from everywhere. You were mentioning to me the other day that wouldn't it be great if the Naquadah generator was like a Bluetooth speaker? And I had originally thought about that. It's a great idea, but it's been buzzing around in my head for a couple of days. How to solve some of that problem. So
right, exactly. It doesn't have necessarily holes for a speaker, and on top of that, vibration and everything else. You don't want it to shake apart when someone gets it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other challenge for building these props, is that when you see it on television, there can be, several different prototypes or hero models of these various props, and they can be used in different camera shots, right, etc., different lighting, different capabilities. Whereas when you build it this way, I have to squeeze it all into this one space. And I have the advantage of miniaturization over the time when the originals were built and now. But I try to keep mine so that they can be battery powered, so that people can display them where they want, and they don't have cables sort of, all over the place and things like that. So that is the challenge, making sure the electronics is designed well enough and the software is written well enough to drive the electronics that it can fit into a nice small space.
And so you're doing things that the show versions didn't necessarily do. And I'm stripping away everything behind me here. Give me just 1 second here.
Yep.
So, for instance, you mentioned. Dang it! I apologize, everyone, for my earbuds. You mentioned the tricorder here.
Yes.
Now, on the show, it doesn't have sound, but this is the Roddenberry Entertainment version that came out, and this one does have. It's actually extremely noisy, but this is something that when it's given to the consumer, it has to be completely functional in terms of what it ended up being for the television series, as opposed to what the actual prop did. So you're having to bring a lot of stuff to bear just to make it work.
I am, and to try to make it fit into a very small space as well, because sometimes I have to appreciate that I don't have infinite amount of storage space.
Correct.
Most people don't, so I have to make it fit in. And in fact, excuse me 1 second, I'll grab this and show you. I said to you the other day, I was working on a sort of a more hero prop version of the Naquadah generator, and this is that. So it has all the working parts there.
Wow.
And then all the lights.
Now you made this, or this is the show?
No, I made this.
Dude,
you can see
well done.
There's a huge wiring harness and thing in there.
Man.
So
now, is that a sound effect, or is that the actual sound of the prop?
No, that's the sound of the prop.
Wow, that's cool.
Though I was going to bug you at some other point and inquire what sound the actual generator made when it was in operation. So I think I'm going to put a sound chip in there.
Oh, keep talking dirty to me.
So one of these, when it's finished, David, will find its way to you.
I cannot wait to show it off. And I love continuing to come across people who have taken advantage of such a horrible situation that we have been handed for the past 2 years and turning it into something good. Actors like Garwin Sanford has taken up French, and Garwin is crazy. He never can sit idle. And those of us, who have been dealt a harder hand through this thing have had the opportunity to either let it damage us, or roll with the punches and then get back up and say, okay, the past 2 years have been hell. What can I do to improve myself or learn a new skill or broaden my horizons? And Martin, you've done a great job.
Well, I could say the same to you. I mean, both yourself and folks like Sue Ann Braun, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
I've stepped up, and you do all of this work. I know it's a lot of work, and bring all these great people together with these great interviews. And so from one fan to yourself, much appreciated, because it's great to be able to have that escape and sort of go and enjoy that content. So, and I know it's a lot of work for you, and I know you don't ever say it, but I know it is. So
I've said it.
Very much. You're probably
I don't hide that.
You're probably the person who said the comment about the North Pier.
I actually know. I have had my issues with the Atlantis models consistency, but no, that was not me. So there are a few of us out there who are crazy enough to see that, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Before I get into some of the other pieces, one of the things that you sent along here, and I'm gonna bring up on the screen, which made me laugh out loud when I got it, was these darn lights. An ID badge for myself. This was really cool. So I'm cleared for Atlantis and Stargate Command. Gate room operations, rank civilian, and it has the date that you sent it to me, and a little RFID chip in it and everything. This is really cool. This made me laugh. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
So
I decided, since I was giving permissions, I'd just give you Stargate Command and Atlantis. I was just handing them out. So
I should go to Cheyenne Mountain and show this at the gate and see what happens.
It would be very sad if they let you in.
Right? I don't think I'd get very close. In fact, they'd probably fine me for trying.
Yeah.
So
a great story, though.
Oh, I may just have to try it at some point. So Colorado Springs is on my list. Have you been?
No, I haven't. I've wanted to go for a long time. So I will try go there with the badge and see.
See if they. Well, actually, there's a lot of fans there. You may be surprised. Martin would go down, and I mean, everyone there knew where they were working was a part of something larger, and not just Stargate, but other programming as well. So
yeah.
What do you want to go through first? Do you want to go through the hand scanner, the Naquadah generator, or the mimic device?
I guess the hand scanner first.
Okay, let's go with the hand scanner first. So, I've got the screen used one too to compare it with.
Oh, great! Yeah, I have a great point to make about the screen used ones. Yes.
So, did you have an original to base it on?
No, I didn't.
Side by side?
No, I didn't have that. And I hit two problems when I designed mine. And the first one was I wanted to print it in like a clearer plastic so that it had more of the prop, because I knew it had the shape,
or the translucency.
Yeah, the translucency of the cover, because they used an original HPI pack, I think, underneath.
Yep.
That. I'm sad to say I did own one of those, but it no longer functions.
Oh, well, I mean, is that one of the ones that Stitch offered?
No, I actually owned it.
The device.
Yeah,
itself. Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it was looking a bit worse for wear. And so I created that one because the problem with the translucency is, of course, you can see the electronics. And so I think in version 2, I'm probably going to create a translucent shell around like an inner iPack looking case that I'll just design a plain one. And then I'll put the electronics inside that. But it just really adds to the weight of the piece in hand. Unless I sort of molded in silicon or something like that, which I think maybe the one you're holding is what they did, or
the one that I'm holding right now it's entirely possible that they molded this one in silicon, considering the translucency of it.
Right.
But the one that I'm holding right now is yours, and it's interesting because it's not a 1-to-1 scale, and I don't think you intended for it to be, because the size is slightly different. But it's almost as if it's were this real, this would be more your interpretation of one that was more functional.
Absolutely spot on. And that was the approach that I took with it. I wanted to make it, a lot of people had said to me, it'd be really good if we could have this as a cosplay accessory. And so I knew it had to be enough so that it could go in someone's pocket, or so that it didn't take up a lot of shelf room, etc. So I wanted to make it a little bit more handheld feel. And it's a little wider, it's a little chunkier, because back in the day when they created those props, they were a little chunkier as well. They didn't quite have the advantage that we have with modern cell phones, etc. I wanted to get away from I wanted a very specific display, and a lot of people had suggested to me, why don't you use a cell phone or something like that? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to have a very specific function. And so I built the sort of the LED matrix that you see in there that creates the effects on the screen.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, we lose one blue dot. I feel for the blue dot that goes bye-bye. But I'm just discovering now for the first time the magnetic dock. I mean, it only the dock lights up only if it's turned on, only when the thing's connected to it. I did not know that before, so I'm kind of like, this is even cooler.
That's why it says, I think when I sent the ruggedized case with it, there's a sticker on the side that says gene is required. And that was from the idea in the base, which was essentially Atlantean devices were only able to be powered by people who possessed the gene. And so I thought that should mean when you dock it, then the display lights up, a bit like when the television show tried to replicate. So
Yeah,
that's
Lantian life science scanner. Ancient gene is required, and
So
then
it looks like you're lucky enough to have the gene.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is the tags and everything, because we saw storage units and rooms several times in the show, and they all had these tags on them where they were clearly itemized in a database. And so they would just had a printer that just printed everything out. You know, as in your, I mean, that's what they would have done. You know, everything is ID'd and numbered and everything else. And the fact that, and I'm going to show off the instruction manual now, that you went to the trouble not only to create the prop, but to assemble graphics for all of it as well, is just stellar.
Yeah, it's
instructions on how to run it.
So often you sort of, some people make some props and, you know, they never sort of give you any instructions on, you know, what to be careful about when you're handling it, or, you know, how to change the batteries or whatever. So I kind of think the instructions are important. Again, it's coming back to that owning the last mile, right? It's sort of having to make sure the experience is good for people when they, you know, get it.
Absolutely. Well, the thing also that blows me away, frankly, of what you did is that you added, it's going back to the details that may have been there were this thing actually real. You have this pink glow that you put into the device that I almost interpret as like being the part of the device that is scanning for the gene, that's making itself aware if the gene is present or not, so that if a wraith touches it, it automatically shuts itself off. And then once an Atlantean gets their hands on it again, then it starts working again. But this is so cool. How much time did it take from beginning to end really to develop this?
It probably takes about 60 plus hours to build it and do all the electronics and what have you. It probably takes in excess, if you put the design in, a couple of 100 hours, because the interior and stuff is designed so that everything fits perfectly and all the screws work and stuff like that, which is why I'm hoping that, you know, sort of someone at MGM will go, well, wouldn't it be great to create, you know, really commercial products for fans? I mean, that's not my intent. My intent's just to inspire someone to go out and do that, because it's not like I am in the position to be able to produce that. My sort of plan is I usually make about 4 of whatever I do. I keep one for myself. I usually send one to folks like yourself. And then I usually put a couple on Etsy and I donate the money to my favorite charity. That's usually how I operate. So that's why there's only ever 4 or 5, sometimes 6 of these things. There's not.
Yeah, you're not hammering these things out like cookies. These are.
Oh no. This is sort of and I'd love to see even more accurate versions from MGM as well. But that's not the plan to do it that way. So otherwise I'll be filling up everybody's house with things.
No, you know that. Yeah, I get where you're coming from with this. This one I did not expect and even know that you were doing the mimic devices. So danger, alien technology, restricted equipment, Area 51 classified, because those darn items keep on going up missing.
Well, they keep disappearing.
They sure do. You know? This one I didn't take it. I've got one of the ones. I think it's from Bounty, but not one of the original ones from season 3. But I should have unpacked it. I didn't think about that. To A/B compare it. But this, tell us about why you wanted to do this piece, and it also is kind of like a more practical version were this to exist. It's not like a 1-to-1 scale again. Yeah,
there is a 1-to-1 scale version that I did that's sort of more like a fridge magnet. It's designed more like it just has magnets in the back, but it is 1-to-1. This one is a little fatter in terms of the depth because the electronics have to go inside.
Understood.
Yeah, and I think in the original they had like 2 little wires that ran out to some of the trees that would go under your costume or whatever. And again, I didn't have that luxury because I needed it to be self-contained and to work. And so, it's a little bit thicker than I would have liked. But there is another thinner version, which is just like a sort of more like a fridge magnet in terms of the thickness. but and I don't have one here, but they are around. They're somewhere.
Let me just put this right here, and I will turn myself
And that's where it works really well, right? Because if it's a cosplay or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just can't do their fish, their fish chatter. But I mean, in my current form, I wouldn't anyway. So I need to. Once this pops off, I'll turn into a fish. So this is so cool. This is really well done.
It took a long time to design it because it has a very organic look. It almost looks like a couple of, like a shell or something like that. It's and so I don't know how many dozens of iterations I went through, dozens of starting again and again and again just to try and get it right. I'm pretty sure it's as close to the reference material, apart from the thickness, that I could find anywhere, with the exception that I've sort of got the switch on the side, obviously, and stuff like that. But
it's pretty close. It's pretty close. I mean, you spot this from 20 feet away, you know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You'd have to hold on to it for. I mean, in some cases, you'd have to have actually had the original in your hand at some point to say, okay, this is slightly different in design. But again, you're not shooting for 1-to-1. You're shooting television versus functional, inspired almost like a next generation version, if you will.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. In some ways, I approach it like if they were making that proper game now, if they were, remaking Stargate today, and hopefully they will soon again, and they wanted to do an episode, some flashback episode that had that prop in it, I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, how would they build it today in a prop studio just to do that job? And that's the sort of way I look at it sometimes. How can it be self-contained? And I did the same with this, which is the personal life signs detector, which is I did as well. But so that sort of works very similarly. Again, it's nice and self-contained, but organic shapes are very hard to model. I mean, you end up sort of having to digitally sculpt them rather than parametrically design them. So
is it because of their circular nature, or like they lend themselves more that way to nature?
Yeah, and there is nature by itself has imperfection, and so you have to design imperfection into the shape. And when the original people made this, and of course I wasn't standing there with them, I'm sure there would have been days when they went, oh yeah, that works, that's okay. But that shape has become immortalized as a design, whereas maybe it was what they could do in the time that they had. They never really thought that way about it. And so but now, of course, it's become my problem because I have to find a way of trying to mimic that in a way that's sort of pays homage to the originals. Yeah,
you have to wonder where do you stop? You have to. For instance, for Rogue One, the Star Wars story film, the U-wing went through, I believe, 900 to 1,000 iterations. If I'm not mistaken, 1,000 iterations.
Crazy number.
How many did Ralph McQuarrie do for the X-wing?
Yeah,
and it's the most iconic, one of the most iconic spacecraft of all time.
Yeah.
So I would have hazarded, 5, 6, 7, maybe, if that.
Yeah.
But even his original art is extraordinarily close.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I think some of the work that goes into these things is incredible. I mean, there's been some great stuff that's happening over in Hasbro, the toy maker, with their Ghostbusters merchandise. They've done this sort of proton pack, and there's not really, I wouldn't call it a toy. I would call it a cosplay replica, really, myself. But the work that they have done is just so incredibly detailed, and so much passion and love has been poured into that, and it shows. It comes.
They were made by fans.
Yeah, they were made by fans who just happened to be working at Hasbro at the time, I think. And I'm hoping that, I would love to see something like the Stargate license, be granted to someone like Hasbro. I think they could do an amazing set of products. And, I'm hoping things like the Eagle Moss stuff that we've just seen with some of the ships is going to be the start of more of this licensee material becoming available, which would be wonderful.
I've reached out to them. Hopefully we'll have someone represented on the show, or at least their products will be, because they are really at the frontier of that for the next round of Stargate products. And I think that they may really set the tone for what Amazon may be looking at to do next. So
Yeah,
they
and
can, they can see the standard.
yeah, you make an interesting point. When is design iteration enough? For me, Stargate is quite personal
Mm-hmm.
because some years ago my wife got very sick, and she's okay now, but we had to go through a lot of treatment and some very tough days. And so what we would do at night is put on an episode or two or three or four of Stargate and just escape some of the rigors of the day and some of the treatments we were going through, and just go somewhere where there's this great storytelling and great characters and great escapism, and in a sense find a place to sort of escape what was going on in the reality of the world. And so
you're
I
not looking
think,
for a show that's more stressful. You're looking for a show that's less.
no, and it's wonderfully
space.
entertaining. Yeah. And I think, when folks like Brad Wright, Rob Cooper, and Joe Malossi and others sit down and write this, they do so to create a great television series. And I think undisputably they have done that so successfully. But there is occasions when the content that they create, in some senses, transpires that and becomes much more meaningful to people than I think they.
Oh, you mean transcends?
Yeah. It literally transcends that.
Yeah.
And for me, it helped me get from one day to the next, a very bad situation. And so I haven't had the opportunity, but I'd love to go up and sort of thank Brad Wright personally, because I think the work that he's done, I think the work that Joe Malossi and Robert Cooper and all the cast and all the actors, all the crew that have made something very special in television. And when you meet folks in the show, and I have done on occasions, they're incredibly generous people, incredibly generous. And I think the fandom is the same. And that's what makes it special for me. So the answer really to the question is, how many times do I keep redesigning it? I guess until they get it right.
Until I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
You may be surprised how often I've heard that exact story where the show brought them comfort in the time where they really needed some quiet nights to decompress and reflect and prepare for the day ahead. And it's the perfect show for it in many cases, because it makes, I suppose that there are others that may be better, but not as far as I'm concerned. So not a genre.
Not as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's sort of, I just think that they created a sort of a magical situation there with their creative energy and all the people involved. And I hope people like Brad and others and Joe and all the cast actually have had an opportunity to realize that my story is not unique. I know other people have had similar sort of situations where, and, I see even on Twitter today that Stargate still represents a place of solitude for people who are going through some very rough times. And so I think the show is elevated to the best that it can be when it does something like that. So I'm certainly appreciative of that. And I think that's what drives me on. That's why Stargate props and not Star Trek props and not Star Wars props and things like that. It's mostly for that reason.
Perfect. I have come to the piece de resistance. The first piece that I got from you that just blew me away. This is, I've always called it like a micro Naquadah reactor, because it's a fraction of the size of the other one. And if I'm not mistaken, it was introduced in Bounty with the BFG. The big effing gun, as it was called, and then seen again in Stargate Continuum. So what made you want to bring this to life as I'm sharing it on screen here?
I think that I always thought that the idea was very, very cool. I always enjoyed the design of it. I thought it was a very clever way of solving script problems that occasionally would come up in terms of things they need. It was very clever. It was very portable, and I thought it just was a really out of this world shape produced in this world, and I thought it was really interesting to do, and so I made that one. And you're absolutely correct. That is the sort of the mini or the micro version. The other version that you'll be getting, the one that I just showed you a little while ago with the control cone, is much larger. We're going to need a bigger case. It's,
I can only imagine.
So so that one's much larger. But it's the only way to fit things in, and the other ones have all the sort of the moving parts as well. So, to try get all of those particular mechanics to work correctly and what have you as more of a challenge. So it needs to be bigger to do that. One of the advantages that the original prop designers had that I don't have is they have somewhere to store all of these things so they can afford to make them bigger.
They didn't have to take them home with them at night.
So this one will be bigger. So I've sized it out, not 1-to-1 scale, but it's much larger than the one that you're holding. So
you've got one sitting behind you, don't you? Isn't that one of the originals? This
is one of the originals. Yeah, this was the advantage of this one is that it actually has. This little portal that you can charge your cell phone from. So it has like a power bank built into the side of it and stuff like that. It does have sort of control kinds of stuff, but it's not operational in that sense because it was dedicated to sort of being functional as a cell phone charger or anything else that requires.
So it was used for that one was made for the show, and they went out of their way to put a power bank in it.
No, I did. This is part of mine. I did. So
I see. Okay.
It would have been a good idea if they had done that. But I got the idea here from on the show when they usually
correct. They attach it.
So I thought, no, I'm just going to put a similar sort of hatch in there.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I was going to incorporate it into the larger one that I've just been talking about, but there are some mechanics that make that a little difficult because the control cones go out and in now.
Yes, they do. On the larger one, they collapse in.
Yeah, they collapse in. So I needed to work out the mechanics of that. I've worked that out now, but that's just going to make it really difficult to put extra cables in those reactor arms because things go out and in all the time. So I haven't given up on the idea, though. I'm just trying to work out how to do it.
There's a way to do it, or maybe it'll be like, you know what, given you maybe have to choose which feature you want, you know? This is the fact that you went out of your way to put, LEDs in the little other pieces. And I think we did a test on the Naquadah reactor. Didn't it go like 20 hours before it died?
Yeah, no longer than that.
Jeez.
I think I quit at about 35 hours or something. I just turned it off. I'd had enough at that point. I just thought, no, I'm turning this off. I'm just going to tell David it's like 20 hours and I know it's going to make 30 or something. So at least
your show with it on. And when it dies, replace the batteries. So
the batteries. So I think the new one, the larger one with all the working electronics, is going to be a little hungrier on the battery.
Oh, okay. I would surmise so, but also, I mean, it's the scale of it. I mean, scaling it up will mean that there's a larger battery pack for it to go into. So
it is. It also means there's more room for the circuitry as well, which is sort of a bee's nest at the moment. But I'll have to, redesign some of that so that it fits in a much more compact space. So that's something I'm going to do.
It's in the right hands.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I don't know about that, but we'll try.
This is the clamshells. These things are not cheap. And this is top quality stuff, and it means a lot to me, and to the consumer in general. That people who design this stuff go out of their way to make it right if you're going to do it. So
I think that's the nice thing. Fans appreciate what other fans do, and that's I think that's what makes it fun to create them. There's a whole heap of things I want to do coming up. There's a ring transport control that has motion activated lights and sound and stuff.
Like for the wrist?
No, the ones that control the transport rings that we often see in sort of not death gliders, but in
the wall mounts. For like in the cargo ship.
Yes.
The buttons that you press. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. And I want to incorporate lights and sound and stuff into that too. So,
wow. That's a distinct Goa'uld design too. So that'd be taking you a little bit in kind of a 90-degree direction to do something different.
It's very different. And I would love to do some of the other props too, like some of the staff weapons and things like that at some point. I think that'd be really exciting to do. Again, they're more organic shape sometimes, so there's a little more challenging, which is nice. But And one of these days I'll get round to building a bigger replicator and things like that. I've worked out how they move, so I know how to at least replicate them running across the table, and that's working. But I haven't got
you mean like one of the
yeah, but
replicators?
It's kind of smaller. It's about this size. It's really quite tiny at the moment, but I'd have to scale up the. But the mechanics just it's a little spooky when you see it run across the desk, though.
Yeah, of course. We have an averse instinct to those things, as most humans.
Yeah, so. It really harks back to your comment about going too far, maybe.
As long as they can't create themselves, that's all that I care about. When it comes down to it, that's fine. But yeah, I imagine at some point, some fan out there is going to take that design and add a few things underneath it to make it go, but make it walk for all intents and purposes. Now, if it's going to be able to bank 90 degrees and turn, that may be a little different, but.
I was thinking of putting a remote control in it, which would sort of allow people to control where it went. Some people may appreciate it, but then other people who don't like insect type things crawling around may not appreciate it as much.
I think of the droid builders, going to Comic-Con with their R2 units driving around. I don't think you'd have as kind a reaction to a replicator walking around the floor. You're like, ew! And you'd have to have someone nearby to make sure that they wouldn't come and stomp it.
Yeah,
because anyone who's like on the spectrum or something like that, a little too the other way, they may see that as a serious threat.
Start whacking them on the ground. No, that's hundreds of hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I hope so that somebody sort of sees these props like David and thinks, gee, I have no idea how to make that myself, and is in some way inspired in much the way I've been inspired by people like Adam Savage to go out and learn these skills and create something for themselves. I would be very successful if somebody came along and made one of these props much better than mine. I would be delighted if in some way they took inspiration and were able to go and do that. So, hopefully someone will, which would be really nice. Not too much better, of course. But
well, I'm going to share your information with everybody so that they can get in touch with you. You've put a link up, and I will put a link in the description below. Your Etsy is through gatebuilder.tech, and people can contact you that way, right?
Yes, they can. And so if they have suggestions or things that would be really cool to do, or, they just want to inquire about either building their own or even getting one built or something, just let me know. I mean, obviously can't build massive amounts of anything, but, they're very welcome to sort of contact me.
Of course. Yeah. I'm looking at your Stargate Chevron right now. And this is still, I saw the one you had behind you. I pulled up the one on the website, but I also saw that you had one behind you there.
This one?
Yes.
That one there?
Oh, sorry. So cool.
Yeah, the sort of lights out.
Wow. That is legit.
Thanks.
And are you planning on doing an Atlantis one?
Yes, I am actually.
Okay.
Atlantis is actually going to be interesting because it's got all the electronic effects rather than metallic. The interesting thing about this was just trying to get it to look as metallic as humanly possible, but given that it's essentially plastic.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to go and try to do something like that. Somebody asked me, I think a year ago or something, when I built the Puddle Jumper, they said to me, are you going to build the rest of the Puddle Jumper? But the reality is the Puddle Jumper is enormous because...
I can see that.
I mean, it's
scaled to that Stargate.
Yeah, and if I made the rest of this, there'd be no room in my house for me. So it wouldn't do it. And
look at there. Okay, so this is scaled to the action figures.
Yes, it was scaled.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
So there's quite a lot, and then the roof just sort of straight in.
Wow. But
it's massive, and so if I was to build a full scale, it would be too big. I think at some point my extraordinarily beautiful and understanding wife would say, you know what, we probably don't have enough room for that one, I think.
I'm on the verge of being less understanding.
Yes.
So, my gosh, jeez. Yeah, I'm looking at the website, and I love the ZPM diorama. This is just stellar, because you've got something that I love that the lights and on the set in the background light up, for crying out loud. That is just so cool. I sold those darn things, and they were a pain in the butt to ship, let me tell you. But so these ZPMs here, are these the toys, or are these custom ZPMs? For the
custom ones that I made that are sort of hollow, that have LEDs so they all light up. And all the walls light up behind it and things like that. I did have a lady reach out to me and asked if I could make her one, which I did. A very wonderful, patient lady, and so Krista waited for a long time, and then eventually I managed to get it down to her. And she painted it herself, and I think posted some pictures on the site. And she's just done a wonderfully awesome job. And it's great to see something that started off in my head be re-imaged and redecorated using her great skills as well. And it looks fantastic. So, yeah.
I would love to see you take a crack at a 0-point module.
I did do one years ago.
You did?
I did, but and I quite liked it. But you know that bit we were talking about before, how many times you go, I thought I need to go back and do a more accurate job.
Mm-hmm. I've never seen a fan one done that's immensely faithful. I was privileged to sell them, so I know how they look. The bottom side of the crystal detail, the fan ones, they're just not right. Yeah. And I'm pretty positive, but that the lid on top of the ones that I've seen is too thick. So it's one of the things that SG1 Props has repeatedly been saying that they're working on. I haven't seen one yet in terms of accuracy, because the translucency, the look of the LEDs, and the fact that they just ever so slightly like oscillated in intensity. Mm-hmm. I would love to have one of those pieces. I would love to have that. It's kind of like basically a lamp for behind me here, like one of my salt stones. So.
Yeah, they're cool. I love your replicator, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that is 3dtech.pro. So that's a Hungarian outfit, and it's exceptionally cool. I don't like touching it though, because I'm afraid that it'll, well, not come after me, but
yes.
It can only withstand so many moves before it's like, okay, the legs are, Yeah. But
I'd also love to do City of Atlantis at one point. I definitely have plans to do that. It's a complicated build because there are so many spires, and and it almost needs to be large in order for you to faithfully replicate that.
What diameter are you thinking?
I'm probably thinking about 30 inches or something like that. It would have to be.
So a coffee table centerpiece.
Yeah. So your current coffee table, you're going to need another.
This one right here is 16, 15, 16. Yeah. And even at its size, there's only so much detail you can pour into it. I've had to hot glue a couple of the buildings back on. Because
that's the problem with it. And also, if you want to put lighting within it, even in the sort of central tower, it has to have enough space to accommodate that. And that's one of the big challenges of all of this prop works, is that you have to design appropriate space for the electronics. And so again, that puts another constraint on the design, because you don't have the luxury that the show had. So so it will be very much the same problem for the Atlantis City, is trying to light that. It'll have to be done with fiber optics. There's no other way.
From a space perspective and a heat perspective.
Heat, the thermals are everything. Trying to make sure that that you don't overheat the model or something like that if people leave it on for. It's not usually a problem, because lighting systems these days are fairly low power, and so it's not really an issue. But you certainly need to think about it when you design it. And come up with it. So yeah, it definitely makes a difference. But I'd like to do that one. there's just so many things I'd like to do.
There's a lot to do, you know,
There's
and
a lot
only
to
so
do.
much free time to do it in.
Yes. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem.
Martin, it's been wonderful having you on and talking shop. This stuff has always made me excited, and to see fans who are passionate about it and about getting it right, and not just about doing it to turn a snappy dollar, but about just getting it to people who love it, and also for charity. Can you say anything about where, in terms of a convention by any chance, where this stuff may be appearing, or is that too premature?
Yes, I can. No, that's an excellent question, actually. My plan is to take the new Naquadah generator, the working Naquadah generator that I was showing you earlier, the bird's nest Naquadah generator, the large Naquadah generator, and the plan is to bring that to GateCon next year and auction that for charity, which would be really good. One of my favorite charities is the Koala Hospital down in Australia, trying to basically save the remaining koalas. Most of them were unfortunately killed in these big bushfires about a year and a half ago.
Yes.
So trying to support that. The Macquarie Koala Hospital down there is awesome. They do great work. And so trying to do it for that. But whatever charity GateCon is nominated will be the one that's the recipient. I don't know who that might be. I think last time it was MS. I think it's a wonderful charity.
I think so.
So, yeah. So,
they did cystic fibrosis with JR for a couple of years. They did Sea Shepherd, I think, at one point. So Stargate Productions was always BC Children's Hospital. That was their their charity of choice. So it's great stuff all around, and it's great that you are pursuing that, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and playing with the toys again.
Brilliant. Well, look for more. There will be more coming. You will need more shelf space.
I'm looking at, rotating these things is a really, really nice problem to have. So
you don't happen to need a large puddle jumper, do you?
Well, I mean, I'm really blown away by the detail on the front of that for sure. So the puddle jumper has just never been one of my favorite designs. Otherwise, I would have pushed for one. One of the ones that I do want is an O'Neill class Asgard mothership. So
yeah,
I'm still,
that would be cool.
I'm
hoping that Eaglemoss do what I would love Eaglemoss to do is do what they're doing with the Star Trek Enterprise D, which is this multi-week assembly piece. This is a massively detailed model, and I would love them to do that with the Stargate. And so I'm sort of
with the Stargate itself.
Yes, with the Stargate itself, I think it would be amazing to do that.
Yeah, because you could factor in a diorama into the equation of assembling it.
Yes.
So for sure, with the gold pedestal design, the traditional stone pedestal.
I think it would be fantastic and a wonderful sort of ongoing thing for people to build. And they've done great work in the past there. So I'm hoping that perhaps, somebody at Eaglemoss, I'm sure, has worked out that would be a great idea. If not, they're very welcome to the idea for free.
I've been loving these build ideas. I don't know if they're the same ones who did the Back to the Future DeLorean, but that's the one that I saw from years ago. And you just build the thing over the course of a couple of years. It's not the sticker price at the end of the day is not minute, but the way in which they do it is so that how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. It's a great idea.
It's a wonderful idea. They do a great job of I haven't built one myself, but I've looked at other people that have been doing it. I know Adam Savage is doing one with the Ghostbusters Ecto-1.
That's
some of the manuals and the dedication and the care is really impressive. So I hope that they do something like that.
Yeah, if they do, I'll definitely want to get my hands on a copy and just do a build for the show.
That would be fantastic.
When I break it, at least it'll be on film. So.
I break lots of things. It's just not sitting behind me. That's all.
Anything else we want to share, Martin, before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. But I super appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. It's been great to catch up with you again.
It's been a delight, and I can't stress enough the resources that are in the description below for people to check things out. You got a lot of free content for them, and I can't recommend Martin's work enough. So if you're seriously interested in one of his pieces, do check out his Etsy for more information at gatebuilder.tech, TECH. So, Martin, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, sir. Thank you again so much. It really means the world to me, the love that you've put into the pieces, and for sharing them so openly. And best of luck to you in the future.
Great pleasure. Thank you, David.
My thanks to Martin McClean for making this episode possible and making my set pieces, frankly, possible, a number of them. I am always happy to have fellow fans on to help show off some of the stuff that they're working on and in development for. So be sure to go and check out his website. The details for all of the links of all of his various products, many of them are available to you for free, are below. You just go ahead and download them. We are going to wrap for the next 2 Saturdays. So Christmas and New Year's, we're going to be off. We're going to be returning January the 8th. Hope you enjoyed the trivia from earlier today. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. You have a great holiday and a happy new year, and we'll see you on the other side.